40, 42 years old. You know, I'm sorry if anybody's in the Army, that's rather old. But they've just never used it before, and they just want it as a tool to communicate back to the States. And so you've got to basically go, this is a web browser. This is an instant messenger. This is what you don't do. Those little time where it pops up that says you need updates, yeah, you need to install those. And they're generally good. It's just a lot of end user. Basically just letting them know the lay of the land.
Well, a follow-up question would be then, so you got those people, but are you saying that there's other people in this small tight community who are trying to rob you of your services anyway?
Well, you have the guy who's like, I think that's a little bit too much money. So what we started up with was, if two guys wanted to split the costs, that's cool. They just couldn't be online at the same time. And that became, well, let's figure out how we can cheat the system and still pay in half, but be online at the same time. Because there's 24 hours in a day, and if we're only on it for 14 hours each, you know, there was only a handful of guys, so it wasn't too bad. Plus you're looking at, out of 350 people, 2 or 3 are going to be scumbags, no matter where you go. And one of the things we do with user training is I set up a small intranet server that's info.panthernet.fob, and just run it on a standard desktop PC, and using actually, if anybody's heard of Clark Connect Linux, I wouldn't say it's an underground distro, but it's not too popular. What it lets you do though, is it's probably the simplest way I've ever seen to set up a LAMP server. It pretty much does all the muscle work for you. You put it in, you select, hey, I want this, this, and the other thing, and it'll set up everything, including SSL logins for you. Really nice if you ever need something like that. So we did a LAMP setup with using Mambo as the CMS, and same exact hardware as the gateway, but through 2 pretty large hard drives in there. And since we don't let the guys go out and do peer-to-peer, we just kind of cached everything. Like anybody here with any of the copyright people? Anybody here working for the record industry or move? Okay, good. So we basically just ripped everybody's stash that they brought with them, put them on one site, and then when people want to go download stuff, they pull it off the web server and they don't clog up the pipes. And by porn, that's basically the only thing gets put up there. Like porn, 2 Britney Spears albums, it's pretty bad. Okay, but we use it also for billing, and anytime I have an announcement like, hey, generator's going down, your bills are due, we're doing this to the network, so just post announcements. I should have brought them so you guys could read them, because sometimes it's 3 in the morning and I get pretty irate. And I've got some funny quotes. And the great thing about it is you can call out people by name. Be like, yeah, I know what you're doing, and you've got a virus and you haven't disconnected and you're knocking your entire platoon offline. I'll let them handle it. But a couple other things it does for us is I set it up as a backup DNS caching server just to take some load off the gateway. I'm running Snort on it just because I can. Nothing really useful because we're behind a NAT and it doesn't really tell me what NAT address it is. It's just like, okay, the same IP address that everybody in the world uses is having problems. Great, thanks. And it's our network time protocol server. Here's one of the screenshots for our intranet site. Do you want to read? Let's see if I put anything. Oh yeah, March 19th. Here's a good one. I'm sick of saying it. Stop assigning static IP addresses to your machines in the .1.xxx range. We have important devices living there. Guys would just put static addresses in, and they like to pick 1.1, which is our gateway. Yeah. But yeah, it's got all our little, if they can't get to the logon for some reason, they can go down. Let me see if my mouse is working. There we go. We got logon. We got a secondary FTP server set up. And here is payments and money tracker, so that way they don't think I'm robbing them blind. So they can see, hey, here's what we have coming in, here's what we have going out. General rules. Standard intranet site for something like this. If there is something like this, I'm not really quite sure. Here's an example. You can tell I didn't do too much work when it comes to how we index files. It's just standard Apache. Yep. And when they want to go pay their bills, they just go straight to PayPal. Okay, PEP proxy. Ran into a pretty interesting problem where we have a lot of military sites that want you to have a US IP address to get into them. And these aren't like, secret cloak and dagger websites. They're more just Army sites where you go to do your online courses. Oh, go ahead, man.
You said it's an intranet site, your info.internet. Now, did you actually register a domain, or did you just put that into your DNS server that way, whenever they punch that in?
Good question. Yeah, it's just right with our DNS caching. It just, before they go out and talk to the ISP's DNS, they talk to ours.
So it's kind of like a
So,
file.
yeah. It's basically just the little DNS server running on the gateway redirects them to that IP address. Anything else? Well, we got a pause going? Go for it.
The TLD you're using is FOB, forward operating base?
Yeah, the FOB, because that's not out in the internet. If anybody's wondering, a FOB is a forward operating base. It's basically just a base camp. That's the new in vogue term for it. But our actual IP is out of Sweden, which is really funny when the first time some guy goes to Google and is wondering why it's in whatever language Sweden speaks. So they speak Swedish in Sweden? Okay, I thought it was Spanish. I don't know. I didn't get by in geography. They gave us, BusinessCom runs Unix-based solution that's called a PEP, Protocol Acceleration Proxy. That is really great when you have less than 100 people. After 100 people, it just crashes out. Watchdog has to keep restarting it. So set this up as a backup that if a guy needs to go to, like one of the sites we were having problems with was the Sergeant Major's Academy. So I had both Sergeant Majors who severely outranked me breathing down my neck to get them on so they could do their coursework. This way we funnel them through here. It looks like we're coming from a US IP address. And then we can get around that whole you're in a foreign country block. Because right now I can't find anybody here work for Department of Defense? Anybody? No? If anybody does, please come see me so I can figure out how to register my IP with NIPRNet so they know we're not from Sweden. But basically this thing's just running on Fedora Core 3 on a really, really old compact that we found sitting in the corner of a building when we took over the base. Really good system. Strips out a lot of the overhead that you have in TCP/IP, turns everything to a UDP stream. Really good until you hit about 100 guys, then it crashes on you. Okay, the other thing we put in for added storage space is one of those little Buffalo Terra stations. Close to a terabyte of storage space. I just let guys upload, download whatever they want from there. I usually don't even watch that box too much, aside from to, put security patches on it. Okay, and here's the main section of the whole operation. Walk over here since I got this wireless mic, which I'm really starting to like. Okay, we got one Cisco switch. Ties pretty much every different node we have goes through that switch. And if I ever need to monitor, because I think a virus is loose or something shady's going on, you can set it to do a span port. So even though it's a switch, it'll broadcast everything to one port on the switch, so you can sniff just like it was a hub. The last unit said that was a personally owned switch, but it looks exactly like the ones the military uses. So I don't know if we own that or not, but a lot of things, to get this running, a lot of things fell off the back of a truck. And we've got two Paradigm Bitstorm 4100 DSLAMs that just push DSL lines across the base. We can get out to about, I think we could get out to 3,000 meters, but we've never really needed to go that far, so we haven't tried it. Pretty simple. They cost about $1,300 each. And for what they let you do, it's a reasonable price. They're all web managed. I've knocked down the rates. They can do 4 megabits by 1 megabit pretty reliably. But I knocked down the speed just because we get less errors, because if you'll see in a second, we don't use standard Cat3 cable for it because we don't have any. We've kind of jerry-rigged something that works. And the most important part of this tower is the baby Jesus. We were having serious problems. We took the baby Jesus nativity scene, put that right up on top. Problem solved.
So what you're saying is that Jesus net now? Or?
Jesus saves, that's all I can say. Not even too religious, but it's working, so I'm not going to knock it.
Jesus saves, no need for backups?
Are you using all Paradigm DSL equipment?
Yeah, well, kind of. We use Zoom for the endpoints. Little Zoom modems cost about $60 a pop. But Paradigm, those two are what we use for our cheapest price. It seems to be working, so. Okay, and here's how we got it all punched down. It goes into 2 punch down blocks, but rather than using the standard Cat3 that you normally use, we were using WD1 and WF16 field phone wire, which is this real gritty, hard military issue stuff that again falls off the back of a truck. We just kind of, when we see a spool, we hide it and ask for more spools. It works. It is a little bit tougher than Cat3, and we just let it run right across the base. I make the guys run their own lines. Like if, say, first platoon wants a line, that's great. I'll set everything up, but they have to maintain the wire that runs from their building to the office because I just don't have time to be tracing lines. So some of them will do it the smart way, bury it, protect it, and they're good to go. Other people kind of just lay it right out in the middle of the earth, and then a tank will come by and snap it, and they'll have to go out, walk the wire, re-splice it. Then they'll be like, that's great. 2 days will go by, the same tank will go by, cut the line again in the same spot. Then they run out and splice it. And they do that 5-6 times before they realize it's time to get a shovel and bury the damn thing. But, a little bit tough on the punch down blocks, but once you get the hang of how to wedge them in there, it works. And at the endpoints, we have Zoom X6 modems operating as a simple bridge. I don't have them routing, doing anything like that. They just complete the connection. Pretty much all Ethernet once it leaves the gateway. A little bit of problems of doing it that way, but it got us off the ground to begin with, and I don't feel like going back and changing it now. The X6 modems are pretty good just because not only will they do the modem part for you, but they operate as a wireless access point, and they'll operate as a 4-port switch too, which is handy. One big problem we've had with Wi-Fi is the FCC does not go to Iraq. So the 2.4 gigahertz range, all bets are off. There are certain things out there that jam it. The Air Force likes to run things, it's basically the whole ionosphere is kind of a soup out there. So if you're in the wrong part of the base, your wireless isn't going to work. You'll get like 10 feet range. And then the buildings were all British and made in like the 30s and 40s. So it's concrete this thick. So to wire one building, you'll have to put maybe 1 or 2 access points in, depending on how the layout is. And the other biggest problem we run into is everything we buy wants to use 110 power, but all the wiring is done European style, and it's all 220 volt. So you'll have guys that just plug it right into a 220, and it explodes, and they're like, oh, why doesn't it work? Then they'll let you come in and troubleshoot it, and they'll take about 15-20 minutes to go, I saw smoke coming out of it earlier. Is that a bad thing? That's about it. And we don't have enough, for some reason it's really hard to get battery backups like UPS systems shipped to us. No commercial site wants to do it. I guess it's because it's lead-based and heavy, so they just won't ship it to us. So we buy the cheapest equipment we can find, and whenever it gets blown up, we just replace it. Okay. Like we go, well, I'd say we've, out of about 30 switches operating on the network, anywhere between 30 and 40, they last about 5 or 6 months and they start to burn out just because the power is so unclean. Okay, billing. Billing's really fun. This is the part that I tried to push off to our S1 administration shop, and they told me to, in no uncertain terms, go to hell. So I'm doing billing as well as doing all the tech crap for this. I'm still a little bit bitter about it. But we have no banks. We do everything through PayPal. PayPal gets about 2.5% off the top. I mean, it's kind of worth it, though, because I got an electronic log of every transaction. I don't want to get too mired down into the billing side of this, though, because it's a pain